And good evening from Milwaukee. We begin with the breaking news that President Biden has tested positive for COVID after experiencing symptoms today. The news coming in after Mr. Biden spent much of this day campaigning in Las Vegas. He was seen moments ago boarding Air Force One, not donning a mask. He was set to begin an event speaking to Latino voters there. The president also facing a new call to drop out of the race from a key House Democrat. Senior White House correspondent Kelly O'Donnell is following it all. And Kelly, I must note this news comes just 2 days after I sat down to interview the president at the White House. He appeared okay at that time. What more are you finding out about the president's condition?
Well, this was a surprise, Lester, and it means that he had to skip a big campaign speech in Nevada. As he was getting on the plane, he told reporters he feels good. He will go to his home in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, and officials I've talked to say he will isolate there, carrying out his duties, that so far he has not shown signs of a fever, and he has taken an initial dose of Paxlovid. Tonight, a White House official tells NBC News President Biden has tested positive for COVID this afternoon. The symptoms are said to be mild, and he has not been hospitalized. That news following a new and prominent call for President Biden to exit the 2024 race. From California Democrat Senate candidate Adam Schiff, who writes, "I believe it is time for him to pass the torch." Schiff told donors last weekend, "I think if he is our nominee, I think we lose." Schiff is the 19th Democratic lawmaker to urge the president to step aside. Those calls had grown quiet after the Trump assassination attempt. The president does maintain support from progressives like Bernie Sanders and the Congressional Black Caucus. But in a new development, Democratic leaders Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries together urged the DNC to delay its virtual roll call vote that would finalize President Biden as the party nominee. Party officials considered holding that roll call as early as next week, but now say they will act by August 7th. Last night, the president saying what would make him leave the race.
If there had some medical condition that emerged.
Also new tonight, after pausing television ads following the assassination attempt, the Biden campaign is going back on air on abortion rights.
Trump and J.D. Vance don't care about women.
Through a young woman's personal story. The ad names Mr. Trump's new running mate, who has previously spoken against exceptions for rape and incest, but supports the Trump position that states decide. Today in battleground Michigan, Vice President Harris called out Vance's views.
This is a fellow who in the United States Senate participated in blocking protections for IVF and has made every indication that he is for a national abortion ban.
Kelly O'Donnell, NBC News, the White House.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.